territories in New Mexico, outside a place called Dulce. That information first was released, and it brought to the public's attention this whole thing about what if we're creating super beings and such, and the Reptoids were a very big part of the story of the Dulce base. And so, yeah, I would have to say that they are. I think that what we're dealing with now are information being put into genes that are being passed down or triggering something inside certain individuals to where certain parts of their own genetic coding is being unraveled, and they're dealing or they're absorbing it through their subconscious mind, and it's awakening a lot of people up to a lot of things, including their power. Genetic alterations, I think it can be just taken so far for physical means. Beyond that, it's a matter of genetics and their interactions with consciousness. I think that's really where, everything is. We're coming down to talking about chemical messages encoded in biological tissues and stuff that have a memory to them and experience attached to them as well. Because how can you develop webbed feet if your ancestors were living in a marshy environment? Eventually, you're going to get webbed feet. So the brain is passing information about the environment back to your genes, and your genes are adapting to it. This brings in this whole thing about the mutilations again. How do we know they're not telling us to keep an eye on our environment?
True.
Because they're taking the soft cheeks from the animals. This is where food first enters the mouth, and it's absorbed into the soft tissues. They're taking the anus, and the vaginal areas. This is where urine and fecal matter comes out, so they can see how it goes in, see how it comes out. By comparing the two, they're going to see what's missing in between, what's been absorbed in the system, and of course, then they take the udder. So we might be looking at things where they're saying, look at your environment. It's not so much in looking at the tools where you don't try and figure out the tools we're using, just look at the message we're trying to give you. And maybe if we open up ourselves to that, we'll get tapped into what's really going on. But, yeah, it comes down to a genetic thing ultimately, because even spiritual enlightenment has a genetic connection to it. If you just stand aside and allow it to happen and be vulnerable to it occurring, I think there's a lot of great things within our genes that we've inherited that really would bring us up to the full attention of being the supreme beings that I really believe we are.
Then again, why though, John? I didn't get the answer from you last hour. Why bring the animal back? Why not just keep it? What's the message?
Exactly. It's a message. They're trying to tell us something, and maybe. See, in a case like this, well, we know that there's a psychological operations of sorts going on. Would you not agree, George?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Now,
absolutely.
They're either other beings or they are other people or scientists and such, and they're doing it to elicit a reaction from us. So when there is a mutilation, they are probably observing the rancher and his first contact with the scene. They are probably observing from a distance any other individuals who come up to that animal and start studying it because they want to see what the reaction is. In addition to that, once mutilation takes place, like Tom and I were discussing earlier, there's the whole thing with psychological profiling of criminals that's been noticed, and they do it in movies all the time. They like to return to the scene of the crime. And so to observe people and people's reactions as to what they've done. So, even like myself out there having to take samples and severing the cow's head to preserve it for analysis and stuff, I'm sure that if they're out there, they're probably on some ship in some underground place. You've got beings right now listening to this radio show that are trying to analyze our reactions to what they're doing because they want to know how we're reacting. They're trying to solicit a reaction. So to those beings out there right now, I'm telling you that the entire audience listening to the show is sick and tired of your kind of behavior. We've enjoyed the game, but right now we're going to start backing our authorities like it's never happened before, and we're really going to try and get to the root of this because eventually somebody's going to have to pay. That's $1,300 per cow or per animal that's been slaughtered. That's a lot of money that those ranchers have lost.
Especially small-time ranchers.
Absolutely. So we're going to squeeze that dime out of them. I don't care what kind of currency they're carrying, but we're going to make sure that those people who have suffered through all of this and had economic loss are reimbursed. That gets back to this whole thing of why I'm trying to drum up donations, anything that anybody could send out there and want the Sheriff's Department to have to help them solve the bottom of this and feel like they're part of it, just send something to the address is on my website at reptoids.com. Send that in with a note saying, give to the Ponderay Sheriff's Department. We'll make sure that money goes towards them. It would really be nice to deliver the news to you guys somewhere down the line is exactly what you, listeners, have actually been able to do, rather than sit back and wait for the authorities to do it. I say take it into our own hands and let's move on.
I think it's absolutely incredible, the fact that Sheriff Tom Kuka comes on the program, talks about how unusual the case is. There aren't a lot of gutsy people like that.
No, and he's a sheriff. I mean, this guy has a whole bunch of deputies over a huge county. It's not very often you get somebody of that kind of official standing actually dropping forward, and especially to get on a radio show. He asked me, he said, John, am I going to get on a radio show where it's going to be a couple guy disc jockeys who are going to have fun with this? He says, because I kind of got lured into that, and that's what happened when this story first hit. And I said, Tom, if there's one man that I could absolutely trust everything to when it came to credibility and knowing that they're going to treat you right and respectfully, it's George Norrie and everybody on the staff and the other hosts at Coast to Coast, because it's nice to be able to have him come out and have that as a greeting and see that kind of support, rather than to feel that here we are on our own again, why don't we just hang up our gloves?
Absolutely. John, before we take calls next hour, National Geographic just did a special on the chupacabra. And in it, they also talked about cattle mutilations, where they hypothesize that insects are doing these precision surgical removals of these organs. I can't believe it.
Well, that's a little far-reaching as far as I'm concerned. That's trying to blame a microbial life form for excising precision cuts in areas. And oh yeah, by the way, they dropped them from great heights. I would like to see what kind of little bugs are going to lift a 1,300-pound cow up, throw it way up in the air to have it bounce down. Or are we dealing with microorganisms flying little flying saucers? And we can't put it past that. Because, hey, how do we know that there are little flying saucers and these little people are out there? We just discovered the people in the Flores Islands out there in Indonesia. Anything's possible.
I agree. I agree. Back to the chupacabra. What do you think that creature is? I do believe there's something going on here.
It could be a reptoid pet. It could be just something similar to a dog. Maybe groups of them that live closer to the surface. They may have escaped into tunnel systems. A lot of these chupacabra sightings have happened around areas where there are caves and caverns and a history of different types of underworld mythologies and such. So it's entirely possible that just like some of these insects will sleep for 17 years and suddenly come up to the surface, that other beings might as well. Might also come up to the surface based on cycles of time, or even weather or climate, or what the temperatures are, or what the environment's like underground compared to what it is above. It seems to me more of I've heard the reports, and it does have a reptilian signature to its physical descriptions at times. It appears to be something more wild than it is advanced and sentient, just like we have mammals, but not all mammals are sentient like humans are. So we might be dealing with reptilian hybrid animal life forms that have been living underground coming up. We just don't exactly know, but what we do know is on some scale that they're doing exactly the same things as these mutilators by taking the blood. So it comes down to blood with these animals, a lot of it, and we've got to remember bovine blood is interchangeable with human blood for a fast transfusion and such like that. So whatever's happening with the blood in those animals, and they're not completely drained, because when I cut through that 1,200-pound Peterson cow, the blood pooled towards the bottom, which naturally happens when things die. There was a lot of blood missing, but it's not entirely bone dry. So what is it with the blood that they're doing? What is it that maybe the chupacabras with these incisions they found with animals not having any blood? Is it really happening of aliens, or is it somebody trying to do it so it's like there was a mutilation a number of years ago in which I think it was Keith Wolverton in his book Mystery Stalks the Prairie in 1975 wrote the Columbia Press said that they found a mutilation in which there were surgical gloves and an army bag with a scalpel in it and a bovine penis left there. So I think that sometimes some of these things are happening to where there are real cases, then there are cases where evidence is left behind, so we think that the rest of the cases are all accredited to the same guys that left the army bag, for example, and we write them all off. So the chupacabras, one of these days, one of them is going to be hit by a car.
Like
Bigfoot. It's going to be roadkill.
Like Bigfoot.
Yeah, well, I prefer to hit a chupa than a Bigfoot. You know, people up in Montana hit deer a lot, especially in the city of Helena, because they just walk from one yard to another down here in this big sky country, also Bigfoot country. But I don't know if I'd want to hit something the size of a Sasquatch or a Bigfoot, looking at just what a deer can do.
There are so many creatures on this planet that haven't been discovered yet. Why are, like the chupacabras, so elusive?
Because they're living in areas which our eyes are not usually glancing towards. Most of it's underground. We have to remember that we've only discovered about 2.5 to maybe 4% of all life on Earth. That means that there's millions and millions and millions of other animals, including large mammals, I might add, that are in the dense forests and in the remote countrysides and such, or in remote mountain areas and underground, that the forms of which we could only imagine. It's like, they find the jellyfish at the bottom of the ocean that can replicate the body forms of like 17 other different predator fishes in order to survive. So you've got this inherent intelligence that's expressing itself throughout nature, and it's only now even our scientists, when they're building products for defense industries and such, they're looking towards the animal life world in order to learn how their eyes see in the dark, so we can build instrumentation based on it. So the nature kingdom is teaching us a lot, and I think that we have one of the greatest surprises ahead of us in mankind, which is finally coming into contact with something else that's non-human and is sentient and intelligent and probably very advanced. And because of this, it's going to elicit a lot of fear, a lot of different reactions, and there's going to be a lot at stake. And one of the things is our soul and the determination of where we go from this life forward. And those times might be coming fast in advance of us. And it's going to be a bumpy ride.
Yeah, it sure is, John. There's no doubt about that. Do you think there's any danger in any of this? David Jacobs, who's going to be a guest on one of the programs soon,
right,
believes that there's something nefarious going on. Do you?
There's always something nefarious going on. There's always groups that are going to try and get one over on the other group. So, yes, it's like there's always a conspiracy because there's just always conspiracies, whether you've got your wife a present and you're not going to tell her what it is, or whether it's a company not sharing the secret Coca-Cola ingredient with all their competitors. There's all these different conspiracies going on, and everybody wants a cut of the pie. What's really interesting is that even behind the UFO scenes, the people that inherited that information from the onset of discovering UFOs and following into it, the people that really know more than we do, and we can only surmise what they might know, these guys in themselves have split and divided into different various groups and compete with each other to control what's going on. So it's not a matter of just the government against the people. It's actually all this chess playing even between intelligence groups. And the whole Bush administration, everything is trying to drive that all into one big super house of information. And it's interesting how these other groups are going to be playing against each other and what kind of events are going to be taking place and which ones are going to be allowed to be known versus which aren't.
Well, this is going to be pretty interesting over the next several years because, as you talked about earlier, 2012 is only 6 years away. Actually, 5 now when you think that we're ready to flip into 2007. And you really believe something strange and mysterious is going to occur, John?
I would like to think so. In my heart, I believe that I feel that way only because of what's going on down in Mexico City with all the UFOs that have been seen down there and have allowed themselves to be seen. The beings themselves are very much into symbolism. That can't be denied. Even all the crop circles, it's just a symbolic thing that they're doing. So if you're talking about date symbolism and what we put forth as far as consciousness, if humans are expecting something to happen, does it always do us good for it not to come true? Sometimes, even under purposeful design, when our expectations are met because they want us to keep the belief. Remember what happened in Fatima. These people, 77,000 plus, gathered together and saw the spinning disc come out of the clouds, a metallic object splitting off light and everything. But the children were having visions of the Mother Mary. Now, that's connecting UFOs and religious experiences for very well-meaning people. And so it demonstrates, as far as I'm concerned, that they want us to have faith. They want us to think that there's something more out there. And in today's world, where all you're being is spoon-fed stuff on television, and from one moment to another, your attention is being split away, really, I think that we need to back up out of that and start looking around us and experiencing life rather than just absorbing what is being given to us and provided to us, because it's really an illusion. And the only way, really, to be free is to get your ego out of the way and say, you know what, maybe we're just not alone, and maybe we need to learn from somebody else once and for all.
Well, maybe we have to do that. I just think that's going to be a great time. It's going to be a great time to be on the air broadcasting.
Hey, listen, December 22nd, 2012, that's when I would like to be sitting there on a rock and being in the perfect place at the perfect time with my heart completely at peace, knowing that just as you cross that transition point, you might be guiding or directing your soul into an irreversible journey for the rest of many, many, many lifetimes to come. And as long as we think that way, we're always going to be trying on a personal level to improve ourselves, to acknowledge nature, and to be good to each other, because really that's all we got.
Well, that's true, too. Well, it's going to be soon enough. John, how do people get information on the DVD?
Go to the website, www.reptoids.com. There is a link up there talking about the Montana mutilation. That's where we're going to have upcoming information. By the way, there are developments that I'm very excited about that I will be sharing with you down the line, George, and your listeners will get it too in time. But if you go to that website, on the page, you'll see it talking about the DVD. 20% of the proceeds are being provided to the Ponderay Sheriff's Department for their animal mutilation forensic and evidence analysis. And so please support these guys in the field. Any donations you might have, send those in. They really need your help. And keep up the good work, everybody, because keep the faith. That's all I got to say.
All right. Stay with us, John, because next hour we're going to take phone calls from you. I'm George Norrie, back in a moment on Coast to Coast AM. Some great stories on the coasttocoastam.com Hot Stories list. Scientists, for example, levitating small animals with sound. That's an incredible story. And how about the story about Bob Lazar? His company, United Nuclear Company, is selling trace amounts of polonium-210 for $69. I assume he's licensed from the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission, which allows vendors to sell small amounts. The buyers have to receive special permission from the United States government, and Bob Lazar's company is selling it. Bob, of course, attracted national attention when he claimed to have worked on crashed alien spaceships at Area 51. We're going to try to get a hold of Bob and talk about this. You know, it is polonium-210 that apparently killed that former Russian spy and might even have knocked into unconsciousness the former Prime Minister of Russia. We'll be back in a moment with John Rhodes. Your phone calls on Coast to Coast AM. And welcome back to Coast. I'm George Norrie. You know, John, we're working on some shows for the Sci-Fi Network in terms of news content shows. You and this subject matter would be fantastic. And if things go as planned, we'll get a hold of you on this, okay?
Okay, very good. I'd love that.
Let's move on to some callers now because it's filling up fast. Wildcard line, you're on the air with us. Hi there.
Hey, George. This is Gary in San Antonio.
Hey,
it's good
Gary.
to speak with you.
Thank you.
I'd like to share a couple of thoughts with you and your listening audience I believe you'll find interesting.
Okay.
The first is about cattle mutilation. Several years ago, I came across a map of the United States showing the locations of mutilated cattle. Underlying all of them, are clustered in groups, either downwind or downstream of nuclear missile silos, nuclear bases, nuclear power plants, storage and waste disposal sites.
Interesting.
Well, unlike you, George, I don't believe in coincidences.
Mm-hmm.
Cattle and humans are very similar in their blood and their organs, so I don't think it's much of a stretch of the imagination to consider that the Department of Energy may be harvesting cattle to examine them for the residual effects of radiation and using planted alien stories as cover for their black ops.
What do you think of that, John?
Well, that's entirely possible. That might even just be one of many reasons it might be going on. Sometimes certain things that take place suit several purposes and several reasons. And I think that he very well might be right on track. It gets back to this thing about the environment. This particular mutilation happened actually upwind from the nearby nuclear missile silo, which is still manned, but they believe that the missiles have been removed. Maybe it's a switching station or something, but we have to remember also that nuclear missile silos are perfectly suited for opening up hatches and having circular things go in and out of them, including craft. So we can't discount the possibility that some of these activities are taking place from those locations or those points of origin. The upwind, downwind thing, I know that there is organic farming going on upwind of where this most recent cattle mutilation was. I do believe it has to do, obviously, from my perspective, and obviously yours, that there's some sort of a connection there with food chain, environment, and maybe even different things to do with genetics, but there's definitely something going on, and it gets back to that underlying message. Personally, what do you think the message might be?
Personally, I think the message is the Department of Energy is looking for the residual effects of radiation on cattle since they are so close to humans in their blood and organs.
Well,
very possible.
When we were out there, Sheriff Kuka took Geiger counter readings and didn't notice anything out of normal specs. So it's probably whatever's happening is probably long term. It gets back to that thing about there's so many areas to speculate on. I do agree though that samplings have to be taken from the natural environment in regards to where farming is occurring, and also different types of disposal areas that there are. So yes, there's a very good valid point that the caller's making.
George, may I share one other thought?
Sure, Gary.
I've been trying to get a hold of you since your JFK assassination broadcast. Here's something most people don't know. If you look on an aerial map of the exact location of JFK's assassination, he was shot at the apex, at the top of 4 intersecting streets that form an unfinished pyramid.
That's
like
bizarre.
On the back of your dollar bill.
Yeah.
Out of order chaos, out of chaos order. Novus Ordos.
Well, yeah, that's exactly, that fits even in with what we're talking about with mutilations and even the Reptoid activity. There's always these nods and these winks going on. I mean, haven't you noticed that that's quite apparent in most of this activity, that it's almost like a tauntingness, like we're not supposed to see this, but, it's like, why shoot him where all the apexes come together?
Would you go on an expedition?
Go ahead.
Would you go on an expedition, John, for the Reptoids?
Oh, absolutely. Well, I've spent untold, endless amount of days climbing mountains and looking for locations of where these things have been reported. And if I saw one, and I've even told news crews this before, if I knew where they existed, or they could be found, I'm not sure that I would be so quick to suddenly blurt it out, because when that Bishopville, South Carolina case took place back in 1988, that town down there was flooded with people from all over the place, many of which were packing shotguns and wanting to take hounds into the swamps and shoot this thing because, there's no good beast better than a dead beast, and that's the way some people think. So, that gets back to that whole thing about the responsibility of informing people as to this current status and the truth of it. My good friend John Lear says the same thing. Can we handle it? I mean, we might say we can, but we represent a very small fraction of people that are in this nation that believe in what we believe in, but they don't want to spend the time thinking about it more than just beyond science fiction in the movie theater.
Let's go east of the Rockies. Welcome to Coast to Coast. Good morning.
Hey, George, this is Tom from Pueblo, Colorado.
Hey, Tom.
Hi, Tom.
I was just curious. I live in southern Colorado here, and I was listening to your stories about the mutilations or so-called mutilations up there in Montana. What other sort of mutilations have you studied from, around the U.S., and how do they differ from the ones in Montana?
A lot of the mutilations are very similar to each other. There's obviously a certain set of organs that are always taken. There seems to always be tissue from the eye or liquid fluids from the eye. There's cheekbone taken. There's sometimes nostril incisions. There's the udder that's gone, the anus that's cored out. Different things like this, including different types of slashings. It really does run the gamut. And southern Colorado out there, especially towards the Four Corners area, which gets into the direction of a lot of anomalous activity, a very high concentration of UFO and anomalous phenomenon happening in the Four Corners area here in the United States. It's just unimaginable to think of all of this going on, and after almost 60 years of it, we haven't been able to quite wrap our heads around it and find out what's going on.
Do you think, John, that you brought it up, Mothman might have been a reptoid?
Possibility. We're talking about when people looked up and saw what they saw a figure flying in the air that seemed to have its eyes, glowing red eyes, lower than its shoulders. And I believe that this could very well have been a levitating humanoid or somebody that had some sort of levitation device or something like a Draco that could have been suspended in the air and hooked its head down low as if to observe something on the ground, but from a viewpoint from the ground upwards, the lowered head would appear with the reflecting eyes, like cat's eyes sometimes reflect, that the eyes are actually in the chest. Now, that doesn't even fit the parameter of most animals that we know of. But when you think of how something could be flying and it could be looking down with its outstretched neck like that, how it might be seen as being something like that. It definitely was around during a period of where there was going to be a lot of psychic trauma going on just later with the accident on the bridge. So there's some sort of a maybe, how do we know that being in the Mothman prophecies wasn't actually trying to warn us of an event that was about to take place, like try and scare us away or get our attention to it? We can't always think
that's always possible.
Yeah, we can't always think that these things are the orchestrators of this. Maybe sometimes they show themselves or do things in order to help us, but we're just always looking the other way.
Next up, west of the Rockies, you're on Coast to Coast. Hi there.
Hi, my name is Mike. I'm driving a truck right now in Warsaw, Indiana. I had a quick question for John. Do you feel that dogs, like domestic pets, do you think that they are a result of genetic engineering, or do you think that it's breeding that's created all these different kinds of dogs that we have, breeds of dogs? It's kind of hard to believe that that they crossbred all these dogs to create all these different kinds of dogs that we have. What do you think that?
We know that we even in modern history have crossbred dogs for new breeds and such like that. But I think just recently they found out that the eve of all dogs, or I guess you could say the root of a lot of dogs, end up going back to China. Isn't that, George, a number of years ago they made that report talking about that? Do you remember that?
Yes.
And I do know that the only dog I've seen that are so unusual that would make me question as to whether some sort of manipulation is going on, even with dogs, the canines, is that there was a dog associated with the Aztecs down in Mexico, and to this very day, I can't even figure out how to wrap my tongue around its name. It's one of those really difficult names to say in the Mexican language.
It's not the Shar-Pei, right?
No, it's not. It's called the Cupliclay or something like that. This dog is so unusual. It has no fur. Okay, it sweats, and it actually cries. When
it cries?
Upset, yes, when it gets upset, tears. It will have tears. Now, that is a very unusual animal, and especially to have come from an area so rich in history, like with Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent being, man, or whatever, that showed up down in Mexico to give all this knowledge of all these different things to the ancient Aztecs, and actually lift them out of the bloodshed that they were in into a religion of more of one of peace and love. But I don't know. I'm sometimes at a loss with all that stuff.
And you say this dog was from the Aztecs in those days?
Yeah, it was attributed to the Aztecs, but see, the Aztecs, we still have to remember what's going on in Mexico City. These
all right, how about this? Is this it? XOLOITCUINTLI.
Go ahead, give it a shot, George.
Man, I'm not even going to guess. I'm going to see
yes,
if this is
that's
it.
the dog.
That is?
Now that you've had it spelled out there, everybody can hit the internet and go look at the dog. They'll say, that's an unusual dog.
Yep, for sure.
So anyway, just in closing that off, remember the Mayans, we don't know their origins, the original Mayans. They had high degrees of technology. They may have been Atlantean descendants who arrived in Central America, and they could be looking for something to return home to pull them off this planet before things get out of hand. So when you attribute a dog like that to that region of the world where even aliens to this day show themselves en masse, you have to wonder, I wonder what was going on in those caverns underground.
Good point. Next up, let's go to our first-time caller line. You are on the air with us. Hi there.
Hi, George. How are you doing? And John,
Good.
How are you?
Thank you.
Hi, fine, thanks.
Great. I've actually got some information about the mutilations and then a couple of comments or questions.
Sure. Go ahead.
First off, I think when I was about 18 or so, I'm thinking that's around 1973 or so, I don't remember exactly, but it was about the first time I heard of these mutilations and stuff, okay? And I remember watching a show on TV where they had found some of these cows that were dead and mutilated, and what they did is they couldn't figure it out, and they were wondering whether it was natural causes or not. So what they did was they actually killed a cow, laid it out on the side, and actually put a camera up, and they video cameraed the thing. They were taking photographs. They took a video of the thing, and like the camera was hidden and they were away, so like they weren't there, so any predators could come around if they wanted to. But what it is I saw the actual video, and you can see where the animal starts to bloat up, and it happens very quickly.
Yes, excessive bloating immediately.
Well, just a moment. They said the bloating starts up, and then the through the anus comes most of the organs and stuff. They actually extend way out, and they go, and then they start to shrink back in, but they're being eaten away. Okay, and then they actually later on, when they did, is actually they cut it open, and they said, yeah, this thing, it was just this, but it looks like it was surgically removed because it's right back to the like the beginning of the anus, like looks like it's right from there on up. They've taken it all out. Okay, and same thing with some of the some cuts and stuff, and on the side of the face where they had on the lower side where it was touching the ground, you had a similar action happening. Now, I'm not sure if that sort of solves all of them or not. There's probably some that aren't. But I'm just wondering, like when I actually saw this video, I saw it on twice. Now, since then, I've never ever seen it on TV again. We've heard about mutilations, a zillion times since then. But my sort of questions on the same side were, when you were saying the face was removed, like, was that the downside?
No, it's actually the upper part and the lower part, all the way back to the termination point where the ear is almost.
Okay, well, you see,
it was about 4 inches up from the bottom part of the molar to the top area incised line, and then from the bottom jaw, from the top of the molar down, it was about 3 inches, and it actually curled over and took out one of the nostrils.
Oh, okay. Well, you see, the thing is, these bacteria and stuff, they basically go in the mucous membranes and from all ends, like at the front and the from the scrotum and stuff. They go in there because of that reason, and into the nose because of that reason, and maybe into the mouth because of the reason. I don't know about that end. But they showed this whole work, and then they were also talking about gashes and stuff that were on the top. They said those didn't have the same action because they weren't subject to be sitting on the ground where they're moist, and also the insects and flies came and actually sort of ate and cleaned that area, sort of thing. Okay, so they didn't have the same problems with the stuff on the top. So that may explain why that cow that you're saying was cut open on top wasn't taken. Okay? And I had a quick comment on the depressions. I'm just wondering, I don't know the details, you know, but could the sick animal, whatever, have fallen, made a depression, and then staggered a little farther and fallen for good then?
No, actually, because what would happen is when it pulled itself upright, you would see a staggering motion where feet would be dragging along the ground, or at least a hoof dragging along the ground, at least for a certain period before it collapsed again. And that's not what it looked like. There wasn't a whole bunch of dirt that had been piled up underneath a foot, like a foot had moved forward and then collapsed down on top of it. It does look very deliberately like its head was pointed towards, I remember, the southeast, or the northeast, and the animal, when it was laid out, there was stubble around it that was still standing upright. Now, you got to remember, I got there about 5 weeks afterwards, but because of the cow actions around the Valere cow number 62, because of the cows coming around there, and then some students from Bozeman came out with Montana State University, filmed some of this stuff, and the sheriff had been already out there. So the crime scene had started to already deteriorate, but it certainly did look like they had placed it right next to that fence. It always gets back to that thing, is it's right next to the fence. You know, and why? You've got almost 600 acres out there into which to deposit something, but it's not. It's right next to the fence.
We'll be back with final questions with our guest, the crypto hunter, John Rhodes, on Coast to Coast AM. Well, on our next Coast to Coast program, it'll be our Friday into Saturday night open lines, so get ready for that. Also, Saturday night, I will be Ian Punnett's guest for his first hour, 6 p.m. Pacific Time, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. He wants to talk about the book Worker in the Light, and he said, George, I've been chasing to get you on the program for a long time. So I said, all right, Ian, we'll do it. So I'll be his guest Saturday night, first hour, on the Ian Punnett Live Coast to Coast program. Okay, welcome back. This is our final segment with our special guest, John Rhodes, also known as the Crypto Hunter. How did you get that title, John?
Well, I just kind of kept thinking about all the things that I had been researching, and the only thing that I could ever think of was that I just hunt down hidden mysteries. It is because when you start to look into one area of the phenomena that we're engaged in today's culture, then it draws you into other areas. So the blanket thing was looking for anything hidden, and of course this gets into the aspect of looking for other beings that are extensions of Earth life forms, and gets into cryptozoology. And so therefore I'm a hunter of mysteries and a hunter of different kinds of wild animals, as well as the ones that are sentient and that might take you for a ride on their flying saucer if given a chance.
Back to the phones, west of the Rockies. You're on the air with us. Hi there.
Hi, it's Barbie from the Fantastic Forum. I'm in Los Angeles.
Hey, Barbie, welcome. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. Nice to hear you and John tonight.
Thanks.
Oh, thank you very much.
Listen, last summer, and I don't recall the date, but I can tell you it was the last Wednesday in August 2005, I think I grabbed a reptilian in my bedroom.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, well, tell us what happened.
All right. I'm very light sensitive, and I had just shut off the TV. My kitten, Calvin, who is all white, was lying at the foot of the bed. I had just turned over and shut my eyes. And you know how it is if your computer comes on in the middle of the night and it automatically wakes you up?
Right.
Have you ever had that happen? Well,
yes.
Only I wasn't asleep yet. I had just closed my eyes. And I thought somebody had hit the computer mouse and turned it on. And the whole room was filled with this strange green light that was coming in through the Venetian blinds that were about 2/3 shut. And I thought, now, well, this is really strange because I'm looking at my cat and his ears are glowing red. And he's looking at something that's behind my head. Well, I tried to turn my head and I suddenly realized I couldn't move. And Howard was laying 6 inches from me, and I was going to reach over and nudge him and say, wake up, there's something in the room. You're a non-believer now, you're going to believe this. And I couldn't reach him because it was like there's a force field between his arm and my arm. And I turned my eyes as far up towards the head of the bed as I could, and I could see in color some appendage. Now, I don't know if it was an arm or a leg, but there was a being standing behind my pillow next to the wall, and I could see through him. And it was like he was in camouflage colors, but it was not a uniform. It was like the whole appendage was in camouflage colors, but I could see through it. And I thought, all right, if I can't reach to Howard, maybe I can reach to you. And as my mind thought that, I grabbed forward, and I could move my arm forward, but just not side to side. And I got a hold of whatever it was, and it slithered out of my hand very quickly and leaped way back out of my reach. And it felt like one of those blue ice packs that you buy at the store and you put in your ice chest, but it felt like how that feels when it's thawed out. It's not wet on the outside, but it's squishy kind of. Anyway, I'm thinking to myself, don't go anywhere. I have questions for you. I want to ask you something. And all of a sudden, I could feel like a vibration. Now, it was not painful or anything like that, but it started at my crown chakra, and it went all the way down through my body. And I thought, well, if he thinks he's punishing me, he's out of luck because this feels good. And then it stopped, you know. He stopped, and I said, come on now, don't go. And if you're going to go, take me with you for a little while because I've got questions I want to ask you. And all of a sudden, he was just nowhere to be found, and the light in the room changed back to the normal light of the street lamp coming through the blinds, and it wasn't green anymore. And I'm laying there, and I'm thinking, well, bull crap, you know. He got away. But my cat, my poor cat, went into a frenzy, and he bounced off every piece of furniture and all the walls in the house for the next half hour.
Typical guy, Barb. You got serious. He ran away.
I guess. But you know, it was just such a strange experience. I had a similar experience, but I didn't see anything when I was in Laughlin 2 years ago at the IUFOC, the UFO Congress.
Right.
I had the same kind of vibration come into my perfectly dark room one night, and it was the same kind of vibration that went all down through my body, and I had the same thought, oh, this feels good. Now, if you want to sit and talk, I'm ready. Just let me sit up, and I'll talk to you person to whatever you are. And all of a sudden it stopped, and the thought that was left in my head was, sorry, wrong room.
Wow.
Sort of sounds like Pamela Stonebrook, John. Have you heard of her?
Yes, I have. You know, there seems to be just, I guess what we're looking at here is a situation in which there have been certain beings, reptilian humanoids, that have appeared to people that have an emotional attachment to that particular individual. And sometimes it's perceived as sexual, but it's not, because it's, like I said, it has something to do with energies more than just a physical act, because I think we're talking about the beings that are sometimes physical and sometimes non-physical, so there's a matter of vibration happening. But the thing was, is you're saying that you could see through him. Now, there's another case that we've heard, and it's on the internet. Actually, the individual has shared it, in which there was a reptoid at the end of his bed, and he tried to think of what to do, or even if it were real, and he picked up an object that was next to the bed and threw it, and it went through the Reptoid. So that Reptoid was half physical, partly
half-dimensional.
But, yeah, he was phasing in and out and in and out, and he looked somewhat kind of almost bored but slightly amused, touched something on his belt, and completely disappeared. But there does seem to be some sort of, like, relationship thing going on, where just as if maybe you had think of yourself like a person out in the wilds of Africa, and you're warden over a certain area, and you have certain animals that you've interacted with before. You tag them, they go down, they're kind of phased out. You do things to them and such like that. Now, you disappear. That animal's going to be in shock, but it doesn't mean that you didn't like it. I mean, it didn't like you. There could be something going on that's really kind of cool, but everybody's in a state of shock. You're lucky enough to have been lucid enough to actually engage. And I've seen this over time and time again. When you're dealing with these guys, they respect willpower, and they respect. And as long as you're respectful towards them, and don't give them an inch. In other words, don't let them see you're afraid or anything like that. Because sometimes they'll react to fear, thinking that they're about to be attacked. Because it's the same organ in the brain that perceives this flight or fight, and you could be sending out signals of your brain that he's sensitive to, where he's not sure which one it is, and he might just, attack you back because out of a sense of self-preservation. So you just have to, be cool with them, and they will be cool with you, and just try and hold the demons inside your own dreams away at that point.
Hey, John, what if we had a nuclear war a long time ago, and the Reptoids were merely humans that have mutated?
Oh, wow. Well, that would make an interesting movie, see?
It sure would.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's evidence all over the world that there has been some sort of high heat that could only be generated by some sort of thermonuclear blast on the surface. I know that in New Mexico there's an area so much like that in which glass is actually fused together. So, yeah, who knows how far this goes back. It might be going back to those wars in the Mahabharata where they saw these guys flying around in the clouds and having big battles and stuff.
Yeah. Something happened. Let's go to our wild card line. Thanks for holding. You're on the air with us.
Yeah, hi, John. Hi, George.
Hey, how are you?
Good. Hey, some interesting theories coming from some of your callers, but the one that I was thinking of was your interview with Linda Moulton Howe the other night. Yeah, I don't think you discussed it with John in reference to the water tank and the mutilated cows that they found inside the water tank.
We didn't bring up that portion of it, but we did talk about the case in Montana.
Right, and I am aware that animals have been left at a height before, and so we know that they're being dropped from heights. It's just a matter of, God, in a water tank, you'd think, are they contaminating the water? Aren't they even concerned about that?
Yeah, how do they get in? And then the plasma beams, that people won't come forward and actually openly say that they saw, other than the Linda Moulton Howe, the plasma beam theory.
There are a lot of ranchers, and these are just down-to-earth, ordinary people that are just good American, hard-working American men and women. And that have had these things occur on their ranches. Many of them say they have given in to the fact that they know that this is being done by something that may be extraterrestrial or even interterrestrial. So, you've got a degree of people that are always going to be in denial, but the battle, if you wanted to go to a place to see a UFO in the United States, I'm telling you right now, that Golden Triangle area in there, where those mutilations are happening right now, we've had these occur. It happens in clusters between 3 and 4 years, sometimes as many as 67 of them. If anybody wanted to spend a vacation, come to that beautiful, beautiful area up there of like Valier or De Poirier or anything like that, and stay at one of those inns, enjoy the scenery around there, and you're going to engage in talking to people. Many people that actually feel the same way and have been on the front lines. They're not people that are going to turn around and say, I think you're wacko. You've got a large group of people down there that are really supportive of it. So why not go to an area like that? If enough cameras hung out, maybe we will actually start getting videotape footage. I don't think those guys from the missile silo down the road from where this animal was deposited are going to share their surveillance camera footage from that evening with Sheriff or myself or anybody else, I would be very surprised if they did, because those are sensitive facilities. There's got to be surveillance cameras around there pointed outwards, and I know, as close as that is, there's got to be something on video, but we will never see it.
I agree. All right, well, fascinating show, guys. I'll be listening later. I got to go. I got a delivery to make out here in Fresno.
Well, thanks
All right,
for calling.
stay safe.
Fresno is a great place up near there with Mariposa. There's been Reptoid sightings up there as well.
Let's go east of the Rockies. You're on with John Rhodes on Coast to Coast. Good morning.
Good morning.
Go ahead, sir.
Thank you for taking my call, gentlemen. I had a call pertaining to a gentleman that had called in earlier about the Mexican hairless dogs.
Right.
Yes.
And the pronunciation of that is called esquinkle.
Esquinkle.
Esquinkle. And,
Esquinkle.
Yes.
They are. I love animals, but these are ugly dogs.
They basically look like hairless bull terriers.
Chupacabras. They look like chupacabras.
Well, basically, yes. But they are known, and from what I've learned, for probably since back in the time of the Aztecs, I don't know if it's because they have no hair, but they are known for having medicinal abilities, and they still exist in certain towns in Mexico, and I have seen them myself. And they exist because, that's not why they exist, but they people use them for arthritis remedies. They put them
What
on
do you
their
mean?
legs.
Do they eat them or what?
No, they.
The sweat?
I think because they have no hair, they let them rest up against their legs or just whatever part of their body has wherever they're suffering from arthritis. And many people swear by the fact that they. I don't know if it's because they have no hair, but they take the arthritis away and they help them out. But yeah, these dogs have been they're documented in the Mexican Museum of Anthropology, and for, like I said, since the time of the Aztecs.
Yeah.
And there's.
Well, I've actually seen one of these dogs. I
have
came
too.
across it. Oh, they're fascinating. I mean, just really, really strange to look at.
There's only 7,000 in North America, apparently.
Wow.
That's not a lot.
Wow. And, yeah. They're very strange. And if you think of the chupacabras, I wonder if you could sit down and befriend a chupacabra to the point of playing fetch with it.
I'll keep my yellow lab over this thing. This is, I looked at the picture during the break. That is one strange-looking critter. His ears are bigger than Spock's. West of the Rockies, you're on with John Rhodes. Hi there.
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Hello.
Are you picking me up? This is Larry from Yakima, Washington.
Picking you up, Larry.
Oh, great. Hey, how you doing? My question is, it might be a little off left field, but I have a photograph of a woman and videotape of a woman holding a baby, and they're floating in the air with white light all around them. And it's an experience that started here in Yakima in September 2003, and I've documented over 100 photographs and a ton of video for it.
Have you sent us any of this, Larry?
Well, no.
Larry.
I'm not supposed to talk about who I am, and I'm only supposed to introduce the website and launch it.
We can't do that unless you tell us who you are. So that's not going to work. Oh, well. Someone tried to leak in a freebie on us, John.
Hey, you know what? You got to give him credit for the try.
Yep. But we caught him.
Right.
I can't tell you who I am, but I'll give you my website. No, not going to happen. Millions of people pick up on that thing. Wild Card Line, you're on the air with us. Hi there.
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Hey, George, this is Adam from Akron. I'm the one that called a couple months back and told you I had the marbles in my head.
Yes. Yes, yes.
Okay, I got two quick questions. I know we're short on time. First of all, I want to know what's the farthest that our guest has gone in his search for the cryptozoology. And second, I want to know what your favorite cryptozoological creature is, because I want to make you a drawing for a Christmas present.
Oh, you got to be kidding me. That's great. How far have I gone? Well, I've entered.
We got 1 minute to go, John.
I've entered tunnel systems and caves and gone into the areas which would otherwise I would not have gone. Plenty of times I've gone up into the mountains and I've heard things and that have absolutely scared the dickens out of me. Luckily, I have yet to come across one face to face. The favorite cryptozoological discovery, I guess, would have to be the Flores people of the islands off of Java that they discovered that were human, but at the same time they were so small they resembled like the little people that were on the Egyptians' legs, remember?
Yes.
Where they have the little people. I mean, you have to wonder if they were back then. So sometimes I think it's going to be one of those little men that would probably be the most fascinating because were discovered to be real. There's all these arguments, but it enlarged everybody's imagination out there, and it really served its purpose.
John Rhodes, thank you so much. Your website, reptoids.com, linked up at coasttocoastam.com. Good luck with the information and the DVD.
Thank you very much. And look forward to speaking with you again.
Absolutely. For Steve Carr, Dan Galante, Wayne Roberts, Tom Danheiser, Lisa Lyon, Lex Lonehood, Sean Ladesseur, Ross Mitchell, Ian Punnett, and Art Bell. I'm George Norrie, somewhere out there on Coast to Coast AM. We'll see you on our next edition. Until then, be safe.